Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar on deep dives into computing with me, Sarah Zaman as your host, and Joe Hodge as your presenter, and I'll shortly introduce her. I'm one of the community outreach managers for the North East and for Yorkshire and Cumbria. I'm responsible for managing the CAS communities in those areas and supporting the CAS community leaders. This webinar is part of the CAS Virtual Showcase, which is a 2-week window of webinars designed to support the CAS community. During the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. So don't use the chat box. Any questions that you put in there will just go straight to me. And if I need to stop Joe halfway through and ask her a question, I will do. Otherwise, there'll be time for questions at the end and I'll read them all out then. The top of the window's got an orange rectangle which can be expanded or collapsed. If you're using social media today, that'd be really good if you do. The hashtag for this event is #CAS Virtual 20. I'll hand over to Joe. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming today. Just want to tell you a little bit about myself, really. I'm a Year 6 teacher and Learning and Technologies leader at Our Lady of Laws, which is in Southport. I'm also a master teacher and a community leader alongside Barefoot Ambassador, and we've just got digital schoolhouse status, so I'm really pleased at the moment. I'm riding on a high wave at the moment, so bear with me on this one. And I'm a real advocate, as Sarah will probably agree with me, on creative computing and physical computing in your curriculum. So I'll probably be talking a little bit about that today. Also, if you notice, there's a little barcode on the right-hand side of the PowerPoint. That's an actual link to a Google Drive folder, and I've been popping useful information in there, whether it's assessment, the useful inspecting the curriculum document is in there. So there's lots of things in there that you could use to help you sort of promote your subject within school. Okay, so in terms of, it's not letting me move anything. Hang on, not moving, are we? There we go. Let me go back one, it's a bit slow, sorry. In terms of sort of Ofsted changes, that's what we're going to go through today. So as you probably know, it started in September. So I'll go into a little bit more about that. I'm going to talk about the 3 I's, the impact, implementation, and intent. We're going to look at the deep dive in a little bit more detail. We're going to deep dive into the deep dive. We're going to look at effective computing lessons, just sort of some bullet points to sort of things that you could consider if you have Ofsted in, or at any point really. And then just finally look at sort of any further computing support. And do feel free to sort of pop in questions like Sarah said, and she'll just stop me at any point because I think that's easier. But we'll allow question time at the end if that's okay. And if you look on the screen as well, there's just a few documents in there that I popped into that folder. Third space learning, as you know, is more mathematics involved. However, they've got some really good information about the Ofsted changes and some good questions as well that you might want to use, because some of us are subject leads for more than one subject, because obviously I've got maths as well. So they're quite useful for you too. Okay, so as I said, the major changes, it was from September, and it's all about this quality of education judgment. So they're still looking at your curriculum, they're still looking at your teaching, assessment, etc. But it's all about this connectedness. This is sort of the word that runs through that document. And this document, Inspecting the Curriculum, is a really good document. I mean, make sure you've downloaded it, you've read it through, pick out sort of key elements, because it is brilliant and it really covers everything. And it's these 3 I's. Everyone's been talking about it. I know we've been in our school talking about it since last year. Talking about intent, implication and impact. And it's a lot more now about, it's not just about a skills-based curriculum. They're really keen on the knowledge now. This is the big sort of goal that Ofsted are heading towards, is that they understood, you know, what they did in the Romans 3, 2 years ago or whatever. It's all about that what are they using from the past to bring into their curriculum now. So it's this conceived, which is your intent, taught, your implementation, and experience, broad and balance, that impact. What impact is that curriculum having on those children, if that makes sense? And, you know, it's that holistic view. We've probably heard the news this morning, you know, with all coming back in September, they're very much that focus on maths and English. However, you know, I think computing can still play a vital part in that, you know, in developing that curriculum. So, as I said, they're looking at that knowledge-led curriculum. They're looking for a curriculum that promotes mastery. And I took that from the maths, that's from third space learning, but I think mastery is really important because in computing particularly, you know, we need them to be masters, particularly when they get to year 6. We don't want them to still be looking at a year, you know, doing PowerPoint in year 6. We want them to be developing and progressing, ready for high school and text-based coding, etc. So it's allowing that mastery across the curriculum, you know, going over things, embedding them again and again and again. That's sort of the key thing that the Ofsted is about. I mean, I know from a friend who had an Ofsted in there, a deep dive in their school. Computing wasn't part of it, but basically the inspectors went up to children on the playground. So you might have your little group of children, we've all done it, we have a little group of children who go into the Ofsted inspector and have a chat to him. But I know that they will just go on the yard and speak to children and ask them questions. I mean, I think they went up to a child and said, what have you been doing in music? What did you do in music last year? So be prepared, you know, that they might just ask random children questions. So you need to make sure that that mastery of your curriculum, particularly of computing, is across the board and that you're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Okay, if you think about it, like, so I think top level view, this is about you as a subject leader. This is about you thinking about what is your intent of that curriculum. You know, what vision do you have for your subject? Where do you want your computing curriculum to be? It's no good looking now in the current, you need to be looking ahead. You need to be looking at your actions and things like that. And I'll go into that on the next slide in a second, but you need to be really looking at your curriculum and thinking, where does that lesson fit in that unit of work? Why are we doing this? Why are we teaching this curriculum? Do I need to be doing all of that? You know, can I hone my curriculum in to ensure that there's that mastery? Because, you know, we need more time, don't we, to get that mastery in there. And the deep dive, they will I mean, we all know this probably already, but the deep dives, they're definitely going to deep dive in reading. They're looking at maths as quite a key one, but it will be another subject. It'll be a foundation subject, and we don't know which one it is. I've routed, and I've not seen any computing ones apart from secondary. If you have, please let me know on the chat. I'd love to know if anyone's seen any in their schools. But I can pretty much guarantee one of the reasons there's probably not been as many is because of knowledge, isn't it? Subject knowledge with computing, probably. I'm only guessing. But yeah, so that deep dive is looking at those 3 I's in detail, taking a sample of your subject, looking at the curriculum. You know, if they go and observe a lesson, they might look at a lesson and say, where does that fit? They might ask you as a subject leader, where does that year 3 lesson fit into that scratch unit of work? Why have you put that lesson there? Why are the children learning that? And they're going to be asking those sort of questions all the way through it. And they'll probably ask your teachers as well. So make sure, you know, that those subject knowledge of your teachers is high as well. It's that interrogate, coherent evidence, can't speak this morning, and that quality. It's all about that quality of education. Are the children getting that knowledge, getting that foundation in computing? And then at the end, obviously, as always, they bring it all together. And, you know, if you haven't provided enough stuff or they haven't got enough evidence that they're happy with, you know, and they'll look at deep dives across the subjects, not just computing, they'll take reading, etc. And they'll see if there's a pattern. And that's what they're looking for, really, that it's sort of cohesive across and that connectedness we talked about. So if we go into intent, in my school, more or less, I feel like I went through a deep dive. It wasn't quite a deep dive, but I applied for the ICT mark, and it'd been something that I'd been working towards for about 5 years. It wasn't an overnight sensation, but I took on computing, having no computing skills whatsoever. I was an artist, I was a sculptor. So I took on computing because I wanted to challenge myself. So I needed something to hang my hat on, and I looked at the ICT mark because it has a really good self-assessment framework. Now that framework is in that folder if you want to look at it. I'm not saying apply for it because it's not cheap, and I think you have to join NACE, which is about £60, something like that. But in terms of me, it really gave me something to hang my hat on, and I used that to set myself an action plan. And I had a strategic plan for ICT for the next 3 years. And I made sure that this is what I wanted to do. I said to myself, okay, 3 or 4 years, I want to apply for that ICT mark. And that's what I did. And it was really good because it focuses you in on what's important in your subject. So what I did was as part of that, I audited staff. I looked at what they knew about the curriculum. I audited subject knowledge. I did subject knowledge for teaching assistants. I looked at making sure that when I gave that curriculum out, the staff would be confident in delivering it, because that's important with computing. I know some of you here might already deliver computing for the whole school. That's fine. But from our school point of view, my head wants me in class still as well. So I basically led workshops for the staff and made sure that with every unit of work, they would be confident. I built in a vision statement, and we have Live, Love, Learn as our work, because we're a Catholic school. So I used that vision statement and made it live it, love it, learn it, as in IT. And we've kept it, to be honest, even though we know it's computing now, because the children know it, and the staff know it as well. And they make mobiles every year, and I talk about it, I introduce it every year so that it's embedded, because that's important that it is embedded. Never assume that they're going to remember something from a few months ago, you know, just keep constantly reinforcing it. And I mixed the curriculum up. I decided to change things. I didn't want to go, because I think we're a bit in that rut, weren't we? When we first started teaching, it's like, I must do a unit every term, I must do a 6-week unit every term, I must do that, I must do 6 units a year, and I must do that. Why do we need to do 6 units a year? Do we need to do that? No, we don't. We could do 3 units a year, and then making sure we're embedding it, then we're allowing that extra time. Okay, give them 8 weeks to do a unit, 9 weeks to do a unit. Give the staff that extra bit of leeway to make sure that knowledge is embedded, because that's what this is about, isn't it? It's about that intent, that that knowledge, whatever we ask them to deliver, is going to be embedded with those children. And that's what I did. And it allows time for other skills, because we mustn't forget that children need other skills as well. It's not just about computing is broad, isn't it? You've got digital literacy within that, you've got IT as well within that. So it's important that we don't all just home in on coding, because I think we have done, haven't we? We've homed in a bit on computer science, and we've sort of forgotten about the other bits a little bit. Not all of us, but I'm just saying, you know, I think generally that's the case. When it first came in, we went, oh my gosh, there's 5 objectives for computer science, I've got to do computer science. So I think that's really important, that you think about your intent, think about, you know, have some physical computing in there, have your barefoot unplugged. The way my curriculum works is they do a unit, they do a barefoot unit, they do IT skills, it could be typing club, it could be, you know, dance mat party, whatever. Because I know I was in a meeting the other day, and secondary schools still say children can't type. That's important, that they can actually type. And for text-based coding, that's an important skill. So I would really recommend the ICT mark just as a starting point to look at your own curriculum and think, what gaps have I got in there? Can I add something in? So in terms of sort of implementation, this is where I've said in subject knowledge is important, you know, auditing the staff, asking those questions, ask the children as well. Audit the children, what do they like about computing? And when I audited my school, 97% of the children said they love computing. So there's a sign, you know, get it across your curriculum, be creative with it. Because this is how they embed knowledge. I mean, as I said previously, I'm very much about creative computing and physical computing. You can see there's a Roman chariot there, and at the bottom they're doing some, you know, cutting some code out, unplugged as well. You know, start with your unplugged. Now, I know you've probably heard it to death, but I really do think unplugged. I always begin with something unplugged, or I might even introduce it halfway. It depends if they're not getting that concept, they're not understanding it. You know, we have to take a step back, don't we, and go again. And you know, with COVID that's happened, we all know that's happening around the world. You know, that's going to affect children in September, isn't it? They might have missed that unit, and you're going to need to embed those skills when they come up to you in September. Okay. So, in terms of sort of impacts, this is where I was saying, you know, they might just ask any child a question, but I know in my school, we're very much focusing on that knowledge and the assessment of these foundation subjects as well. What have they learned? How are you recording that? You know, in your school, think about what your assessment is. It could be just a printing screen and they're writing some comments about it. It could be like what went well. They could be peer assessing. There's all sorts of ways you can assess what the children have learned, and that's entirely up to your school, isn't it? I tried to build mine into what the school was already doing, because I think I had something, but it was totally different to everybody else. And you've got to consider the whole, you know, the whole environment that you're working in, and be that sort of So my assessment system is built into what the school is doing, and it's just simply that we record who's at, who's below, working towards, etc. And that goes up to the next teacher, and then they are aware of what the level the children are, and that's for each topic as well. And then I monitor that. So I think impact from your point of view as a lead is make sure you understand how your children are getting on in that subject. Look at percentages, look at that data, do a bit of analysis on it, and just say, okay, so we've only got 30% aren't doing very well at coding or whatever. We've got a massive working tool. What can we do? How can we adapt our curriculum? And then it's going that full cycle, isn't it? I think it's like a flow. Okay, all right, well, we haven't really impacted there. I need to go back to my intent, and I need to see where my gaps are. I need to see what do I need to build into my curriculum to make it, to make that impact greater, so that those children achieve well. I mean, I think that's important, isn't it? It's all about embedding. I'm just checking I've not missed anything. Yeah, and a lot of the implementation impact is about that question as well. It's developing the questioning with the staff. I really want to observe staff teaching ICT. I've done team teaching, I've done supportive, I've done workshops like I've said, but I really want to observe staff teaching ICT. But I think, teaching computing, sorry, I think it's still early days with that one, but that's where I see my vision in my school going, is that I would now at this point go and observe staff and see where they're up to see whether my intent that I planned, a couple of years ago is actually being productive and working. But at the moment we've got maths focus, we've got English focus, and it's very difficult to suddenly say we're going to come and observe you in computing as well. But I will support staff and team teach with them. So in terms of deep dives, I've added a little diagram extra, sorry, so you might not have that on your PowerPoint when you get it downloaded, but I thought it was quite a nice one. Again, they're looking at you first, aren't they? They're going to talk to you first, and they're going to ask you about your curriculum. They're going to ask you why. Now, when I went through the ICT mark, I had an Ofsted inspector came in who led the mark, and he literally sat me in a room for 2 hours and grilled me about computing, about my curriculum and everything. It was like, I felt like I'd gone through a deep dive, can I be honest? And I thought, if I can go through that, I can go through a deep dive. It was really intense, and it's all about the why, isn't it? Why are you doing this? What is the reason that you're doing that curriculum? Are you, why do you need to do 4 units? Why do you need to do this? Like I said previously, it is all about that. Looking and thinking about your curriculum, think, do I really need that in there? Do they really need to do that? Can I just extend that unit? Can I add something plugged in that unit? Can I just adapt it a little bit? For example, I've written one of the barefoot units, the co-packing one, the year 6, well, it's aimed at year 6, 5 and 6. I've now changed that, and I've written a Morse code unit to go alongside it. So even my own planning, I've adapted it, because that's what we do as teachers. We look at something and we say, okay, that element works, but that doesn't. Let's mix and match things up, change it up a little bit. Be a little bit brave. It is a bit scary, but the benefits you'll get out of it outweigh it, honestly. And that's part of that thinking, is it have a vision for your subject. I mean, mine goes on the school improvement plan, everything that, we have an action plan, we report to governors about what the progress of our subjects is, and if you're not doing that, why not? Get in there, talk to your governors, say, this is what I'm doing in my subject. Get yourself known in the school, get a name for yourself, really. Connected sample. So we all know that sort of the observation focus. I mean, we were Ofsted last year, and we know that the focus has slightly changes. They don't observe as much. They are going to go back to 2 days. So we had a 1 day last year, but I think it's going to go back to 2 days now. But the idea is they're not really just interested in that one lesson. It's how it fits into the whole curriculum. And also they're looking more at your books and things like that. I know this year we're going to go for books for every subject, for every foundation subject. It's going to have its own book, which I quite like, because I want to see some unplugged. Yeah, even if it's photos or something like that, I want to see what the children are doing. It's not just all computer based, because I think that's important, but we need to understand I found with children that they're great at slapping blocks in, they're great at doing a bit of tinkering and all that and getting something to sort of go. But if I said to them, what does that block actually do? Why when I press play, when I press play, or the red triangle, green triangle on that scratch thing, is it going to work? Why is it working? What does that doing? What does that loop do? And those sort of questions, really, you can really get into the deep dive, as I say, of your subject by, you know, looking at unplugged activities, looking at, you know, Parsons problems, cutting up code, getting them to, you know, annotate code and things like that. I mean, I know I talked with, I went to Carl's on Prim last week, and I've introduced Prim into a lot of my planning now. And again, that's part of my strategic plan to make sure it's throughout the whole school. I've done it, but I want to implement it with other people. You know, and if you've not heard of Prim, there's a workshop coming up soon. I think I've written it in later. I'll see the date later on. Sarah will probably pop that in for me in a minute. But yeah, get to know about Prim, look at that, because that's a really good model, and that's great for planning and showing that progress within computing. We said about work scrutiny, they'll look at the books, which I think is brilliant. I think that's so much better that they're looking, because, you know, everybody has a bad day, and it might have been a really awful day that, you know, you could have had something could have happened, but they're looking at your book and they're looking at your work. And I think that's why it's important to maybe have some sort of portfolio or evidence of what the children are doing in computing as well. And the idea is, with my subject, is I'm going to start the book like a passport. So they're going to have it at the beginning, in year 1, and then it's going to go up with them all the way up to year 6, and then we can see the progression then. To avoid that, well, we did a PowerPoint about World War II. Well, yeah, that's great, but really year 6, that's just an extra additional time, isn't it? That's part of your extra week, so they've allowed you by doing 1 unit. I don't want to see the PowerPoint as being the be all and end all, because in year 6, that's bread and butter. You should be doing that in other subjects anyway. And discussion with the teachers. So this is where it's important that your staff have that subject knowledge and they understand where their curriculum fits in. You know, it might be a bit of prepping before, you know, grab your teacher before they teach that lesson. Ideally, I always try and I love it when they go and watch somebody else and not watch me teach computing, because I'm year 6 and I always get the maths. So, and I teach I teach the top set maths. So I always get the maths person in for mine. So they probably never come and watch me in a computing lesson. It's a shame, but I'd love to see them. But, you know, that's where you need to make sure that everybody is sure-footed with their knowledge. And discussion with the pupils, I think there's more of that now, isn't it? It's more about asking about the pupils, what they think. And later on, we'll look at some questions that they might ask the children. Okay. This model is quite nice. This is in that document, Inspecting the Curriculum, if you've not seen it already, from Ofsted. But it's quite a nice sort of overview of what I've just said, really. I like the model of it because it's easier to understand. But you can see in the middle what that deep dive consists of. So it's all about us, obviously, because curriculum leaders, they'll start with us. We are the first place they'll start with. And then, you know, they'll look at the work and they'll discuss with the teachers and the pupils, etc. And, you know, it's that cycle, isn't it? They'll gather all that evidence together and then see how your computing curriculum sort of fits in together, how each of those elements lock together like a jigsaw, really. Okay, so here are some questions that the teachers might get asked. Okay, so how do you monitor the curriculum? Do you remember we talked about that? Are you auditing the staff? Are you looking at their books? Are you doing book scrutiny? Are you looking at the planning? Checking that the planning's been, you know, I mean, I know in high school I do most of the planning, but even so, you know, are they delivering that planning? That's why it's nice to have those books in place so I can see, oh yeah, actually they have taught that. And I ask for portfolio evidence, I ask for assessments every term to make sure that I'm sort of keeping on top of my subjects. So you need to make sure, even though it's, you know, you might not think it's a core subject, well, it is to me. I still think computing's core to me. But, you know, you need to make sure that you're monitoring your subjects effectively. And if you've not got anything in place now, you need to be looking at something. How it's timetables. We're a massive school. We've got 530 children in my school. So you can imagine, and we've got one ICT suite. So how is it timetable? How are they using it? Which is another reason why I went to 3 units a year, because it allowed them chance to finish stuff. Otherwise, they were halfway through a unit and then they think they'd have to start another one. We want to make sure that that coverage, as it says there, is part of their curriculum. The other thing as well is, you know, we've got all the devices, you know, unplugged. We've got microbits, so they can be used. We've got iPads now. So those sort of physical devices are really nice to have alongside that. So it means it allows you that more time in the suite to focus on maybe coding or IT skills if you want to. So how do you ensure the content and activities are appropriate for progression? Again, you know, how does it fit into your curriculum? You know, you need to be, I look at my curriculum map every year, literally, and I'm always adding and changing things all the time. And in that folder that I showed you, I put my one in there so you can see it. And it consists of a unit of work, barefoot, some physical computing, and maybe some IT skills as well. It depends what it is. But it means that you're checking that progression, because if you're not building on it, you know, it's no good doing, I don't know, let me think of something, microbits in year 1 and then doing them in year 6. I'm not saying you would do microbits in year 1, you can do. But, you know, are you ensuring that progression? I've got physical devices that show progressing. So it's using the physical side of computing as well to show that progression in the computing. And adjusting the lessons as well. You know, we're going to have to do a lot of adjusting in September, aren't we? Because things will change. So it might be that I need to look at, you know, the subject lead, you need to look at the curriculum for last year and think, what have they missed? What do they need? Can we adjust it? Can we add a unit in? Can we add some key skills in? Can we make them do a few more unplugged activities for those skills they've lost? Those are the things now, particularly, I think, you know, 3, 4 and 5 on this, COVID is definitely, you know, you've got to be thinking about your curriculum now and what those changes need to be. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll know there's not going to be any Ofsted inspections at any point soon, but the point is you need to be ready if there are, don't you? And it says, what practices do you use to build knowledge to address gaps? This is why monitoring your subject, knowing where those gaps are, you can then build that into your new curriculum. So it's part of your intent, isn't it? It's going back, it's doing that loop back to the top, as we've said before. I know I'm saying the same sort of things, but you know, it is about that, isn't it? It's about making sure that those gaps have been filled and staff are confident. And that challenge, mastery. We talk about mastery in maths and in everything else, but I like the word mastery because it sort of says it all, really. It's not about mastery in terms of just your greater depth, is it? You've got to think about mastery for your lower ability as well. What does mastery look like to them? And it might be, you know, you need to do a staff meeting about what mastery in computing is, because I think that's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to understand, what do we mean by mastery? What do I mean by mastery? What do you mean by mastery? And make sure that the staff are confident. You know, you've got to be delivering regular staff meetings. A really good one at the moment is, you know, get a barefoot one in there. You know, the new programming one over the hump is brilliant. Getting over the hump, really good. If you've not seen it, or if you've not delivered it, or get that into your staff now. You know, maybe do that as an online one in September. You know, that's a really good one for developing staff knowledge and ensuring that the challenge is there, because there's code tracing in there or code reading, and those sort of unplugged style activities as part of it as well. So that's showing staff how they can introduce that into their lessons. In terms of the children, as I said, they might just grab a child off the yard, ask a question. They might just be walking down a corridor and ask them a question. They have done it. That has happened on quite a few that I've heard of. I've not heard of a computer one, as I've said before. However, they will sort of question the children, because it is ultimately all of what we're doing is about the children. It's about them having that knowledge and understanding, and it's about embedding that curriculum with them. So, do you like computing? Well, I think they're going to say yes or no to that one, but yeah, I would say, what do you like about computing? And they might say something. And, you know, if you've got that memorable activity like physical computing, I mean, for example, I'm an associate lecturer at Hope University now, and we take them to Hope Uni, and they go and do a day with the students, and they do a morning with the students, and they get the crumbles out, and they've got little groups of things, and that is a memorable experience, isn't it? That's taking them and doing something a little bit different rather than just the norm. You know, getting your microbits out, getting your spheros out, whatever you've got, try and do something that's going to be memorable for those children, because particularly if they get asked about it, they'll say, oh yeah, I remember doing that in year 4 and we did this and whatever. And those are the experiences that they won't forget. So show us some work you're proud of. You know, if you've got their books there, They can show them from, they can say, oh, look, here's this is what I did in year 1. And it's all there as well, isn't it? You've got the whole curriculum in front of you, whether you use passports or whatever, but you've got everything that they've been doing in that one book, haven't you? So it's really nice to show them how they've developed over time and what skills they've learned and knowledge they've what knowledge has been embedded in them. What do you do if you're struggling? How have your teachers helped you? I mean, I'm a big believer in peers as well, using the children around you. If you're one member of staff with like 30 children, it's very difficult, isn't it? So using those gifted children, using those more able children to help others, do peer coding, accept those sort of things you could introduce into your lessons. We'll talk about lessons in a second, but, look at different ways that you can do your lesson. I mean, I would really, if I had an inspector coming into my office, I would probably do an unplugged lesson just to show them that actually everything doesn't have to be on a computer, doesn't it? And they still got that understanding and knowledge from it. So think about, if you're going to have an Ofsted, what would you want them to be teaching when they came in? How well they're done, what you did last year or years before, they might ask, mightn't they? And how you challenged, again, we keep talking about that mastery all the time. This is taken from Simon Horton's. He's got an actual really good website there with lots of information on. If you wanted to look at him, he's got some great ideas and some planning. I mean, there's so much stuff out there now. I mean, when I first started, as a master teacher 6 years ago, there wasn't much out there, but now I think there's a breadth of almost too much in a way that you could dip into, and I'm going to recommend a few things at the end. So really be thinking about not prepping your pupils, because if you're delivering the curriculum as you should be, you don't need to prep the pupils. They'll already have loads of things to talk about. So this is taken from CAS about, they've got a little document on about deep dive question and things like that. I'm going to add something to this as well, because I don't think this is an extensive list. This is just some. So it's building on we all do that. We all start a lesson, don't we, talking about what we've been doing, where we're up to, and you do a bit of a recap. You might have a little bit of a fun start. So you might have some code on the screen and say, oh, what does this code do? Something like that, some sort of starter. Setting those objectives, making it clear what you want them to do. And that subject specific vocabulary, we want them, year 1, my year 1s, they know what an algorithm is. They know what debugging is. Get it down as younger ones, get them keen on, understanding that, get them used to using it. What I do in my classroom and all classrooms around school is we have the barefoot poster on, and I've said to staff, can you please use that vocabulary within other lessons? So where did we do debugging today? Oh, we did a sequence of instructions, didn't we? Oh, where have we seen that word before? So it's introducing that vocabulary across the curriculum, because as I've said, creative computing is my thing, and I really believe that it embeds children's knowledge if you do it across the curriculum. And ultimately it saves you time as well, because if I'm doing about, for example, Morse code, I have to talk about that Morse code lesson, Morse code links to my World War II, doesn't it? It links to the code crackers, it links to Alan Turing, and all those other links are there. But it's still code cracking, it's still using, and then from that I introduced binary in as well. We did a bit of binary in there as well. So a bit of maths, a bit of computing, all sort of blended into one. But it embedded their knowledge of algorithms, sequence selection, repetition. All of those things were built in through that Morse code unit. It's not just about that one subject. And rehearsing familiar well, we're going to have to do a lot of this, aren't we, in September? Pupil to pupil, we said, peer to peer, trial and error, tinkering, giving them that chance. I mean, if you think about the PRIM model, it's like predicting code, running the code, what happens to it, this is what PRIM is, investigating it, what does that block do? Well, if I change that number there, what's going to change? How's that going to change that code? And then allowing them to modify, because I don't know about you, but if someone said to you, right, I just want you to go and code that or whatever, I mean, we could probably give it a good go, but wouldn't it be much easier if they said, well, here's a little bit of code, I want you to look at that little bit of code and I want you to change it, I want you to see what you can do, see how you can make that change, or give them some questions and say, okay, here's the code to draw a square, say, for example, simple one, draw a square, okay, I want to draw a hexagon, what do I need to change? Now, with that question, it's not only about computing, it's about maths, isn't it? It's about understanding how many sides does a hexagon have? What are the angles in a hexagon? So you're already introducing other subjects through that one subject. So it's all about that, you know, and then the making of it then. So the PRIM model, I would say, I would really recommend it in your coding, because it really does allow that progression. And it's an ongoing process, isn't it? Because they might make it and then say, well, actually, I don't really like it. They might go back to modify again. They might investigate it again and say, oh, actually, I don't really like that. I'm going to do a little bit of a play with it again. And now I'm going to run it and see what happens. So it's a really good model if you've not seen it. And off-screen, advocate for off-screen, definitely. You know, Barefoot, fantastic resources, and they've got units of work in there now. A really good one is CS Unplugged as well. If you've not used that one, I've used that for binary and adapted that for primary, obviously, because it's mainly secondary, but they've got some really nice things in there as well. Understanding the relationship between the code, something happening. Yeah, the thing is, it's all very well on Scratch seeing the thing move, brilliant, but the first time, I mean, I don't know if you've ever used Crumbles or Micros or whatever, but the first time they press that button and something happens in the real world, the children's faces just absolutely literally light up. It is so exciting to them. We might have seen it 100 times before because we've already taught our lesson, but then that first moment of seeing that light flash on and off, it's that wow, isn't it? So it's about the code, but then it's about hang on. And you know, if you do physical computing, you can introduce DT, you can introduce art. For example, your Roman chariots, they had to design it, they had to build it. So there's all those skills as well, because sadly, you know, children as they get older start to lose those creative skills. So it's important that we maintain those as well. And physical computing is the way in there. And you know, it's exciting, isn't it? There's nothing more exciting than getting your spheroids out, you know, and saying we're going to design a Roman gladiator and we're going to have a battle off, you know, or we're going to make a creative course, and you get the spheroids and they put the Roman gladiators on and off they go, you know. So, and then they're coding about the angles, so then it's maths again. So there are lots of ways that you can make an exciting, never mind effective, it's exciting as well, isn't it? And you want the children to be excited, because if you're excited, you're interested, aren't you? I was thinking, if I get excited about something, the kids are going to get excited 10 times more than I am. So, you know, in an early stages, it's off screen, it's programmable toys. You've all probably got B-bots. Everyone's got B-bots, but B-bots are really good in upper key stage as well. Don't rule them out. You know, I've used B-bots with older children to say, I want you to write something for the year ones. I want you to give them a task. I know in year one we did an activity with the Queen's knickers, if you've heard that story, and they did a grid, and the year sixes went down and actually coded with them and supported with their coding, and they had to code on the grid and say, and they were using like coordinates as well, like C4 and things like that. So they were using lots of skills that actually is not part of the year one curriculum. But does it matter that it's not part of the year one curriculum? Did they understand it? Yeah, of course they did. So it's introducing that little element of challenge, trying out different things. As I said, if nothing else from this, hopefully you'll feel a bit braver to give things a go. And I always think that word is justify. If you can justify why you're doing what you're doing, I don't think they're going to have a disagreement about that. Because I would certainly stand up for myself and say, well, I'm doing this because of this. And as long as you know why, there's no problem, is there really? The other thing I would add to that is that it's not really in it, is your classroom management is really important, particularly in computing. I can't stress how important that is. You know, you need to know exactly, you know, particularly if you've got physical equipment out, you've got to have a really strong classroom management strategy and know how that's going to work. I mean, I know I'm probably teaching to suck eggs, but, you know, it is important that that's a key part of it, that you know where those children are sitting, who they're going to be working with, how their support's going to work, etc., etc. Because you might group them deliberately that you've got more able together. You might group them that you've got more able with a less able, but you've got to be careful there that the more able child doesn't take over. So it's that balance, isn't it? It's finding that balance. So I've already talked a lot about Barefoot, fantastic. Free, I mean, can't say any more really. I've delivered lots of those workshops. I've delivered the new programming workshop as well. Fantastic resources. If you've never seen them, I can't believe anyone's not seen them, but if you haven't, have a look at them. The NCCE now have still got the training handley for staff, and I've just got the primary certificate and the GCSE accelerator one as well, which was a bit challenging, a bit beyond my brain, I think, to be honest, but They're really good courses, and they're all free at the moment. They're online. So, and if they're not free, you can get a bursary for those that aren't, because some are free and some aren't. It depends who's running them. There's also the resource repository, which has got some excellent planning in there, some just more planning. I'm not saying that you have all of that in. Mine, as I say, is mix and match. I've got units of work for some. I've got units that I've written. We use Rising Stars, but I don't use all of them because some of them aren't right for my school. I'm not saying they're all awful, but some don't fit. So it might be I know some of us are maybe Purple Mash or Education City or Discovery, or those ones. You might have sort of a set curriculum. That's fine. But try if you can to add a few of those other things in that we've talked about, such as physical computing. Try and sort of mix it up a little bit. CAS Community is fantastic. At the moment, I would say it's probably one sort of positive thing out of COVID is these today, having these lovely meetings today, having the conference that loads of people can access them. CAS Communities have been brilliant as well. I mean, I've never had so many people at one of my CAS meetings ever, because it was great, because people can just pop in, can't you? You can sit there in your PJs if you want to, and have your cup of tea at the side. So it's allowed that opportunity, and I think it's something, hopefully, Sarah will not just agree with me at the end, that we're going to stick to, and we're probably going to keep that, maintain that, because I think it's really successful. If you've not dipped into, there's also the CAS Inspire as well. They've been running some specific workshops. There was an early years one last week, which I went to. So they're really good. They've got speakers in there who are teachers or experts in their field in terms of whatever that's. So look at those as well. And CAS Chat's always good on a Tuesday. There's usually a theme. I missed it this Tuesday, sadly, but I'm usually a regular at that CAS Chat. So always try and grab onto that hashtag CAS Chat. Well worth following on a Tuesday at 8 o'clock if you haven't done so already. Microbit as well, they've got some new lesson plans on there which look really great. I've not used those yet, but I'm planning to add those to my curriculum for next year. And they've also got Classroom as well, which allows you to watch what the children are doing. You can set them up, you can give them a code, and they all log in at the same time. I've not used it yet, but I'm looking forward to use it. Ben Davis from Manchester is very good on Microbit. I know he's written some of the resources. So if you've got any issues with that, he's the one to get in touch with, because he's the guru on terms of Microbit. Okay, so I think I've come quite nicely to the end. A couple of minutes to spare. As I said, that folder has got lots of things there. It's got examples of assessment. It's got lots of questions about deep dive that you might get asked. What I suggested to my CAS community when I delivered this, not last time, but the time before, in February, was I said to them to get those questions out that you might get asked, put them in a document and write your answers in. Be prepared, go through all of those questions. That's what I've done. I put them in a document and I've said, okay, what's the intent of your curriculum? And then I bullet pointed my ideas so that it's something that I can have in front of me as a guide, or just have a read through before if I did get a deep dive. I'm not saying there won't be much a good answer, but it's just getting it in your own head and thinking it through before you get in there. So that would be a really good thing, I would say, homework for you. Get those questions out and start thinking about what your answer would be. So there's lots of those in there. There's the new Ofsted curriculum in there. There's lots of barefoot as well. I've downloaded all the barefoot stuff and put that in there. And it's something I'll just keep adding to. So once you've got that link, or you scan the QR, and I think Sarah might put it in. Should I put it in the chat as well, Sarah? I'm not sure. We can always do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, anybody got any questions? Or
yeah, they have. There's quite a lot. Okay, here we go. So one of the questions was, that some people can't find the Google Drive folder. Did you share that? Okay. Can you just put that in chat, because that will go out to everybody. And then I'll just go back to what some of the, because we've got loads here. Where is the link?
Can you see? I don't know. Can everyone see my folder? Hopefully they can. Can they see? Yeah. Can you see that, Sarah? Yeah. So I can show you that now. Actually, yeah. What I'll do is I'll just get a shareable link now. I have made it available to everybody, so hopefully you should all be able to access it. I'll copy the linky.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just need to get myself open into chat because I'm not in chat at the moment. Right, where am I going here? Yeah, go on anyway, sorry.
So we've got somebody's asked, do you have an example of the passport that you can share that you talked about?
I haven't got an example of a passport because we're going to use a book, but I do have. Has that come up there now? That doesn't look like it's showing it, does it?
Hold on, will I just go into chat?
Oh no, oh it did. Hang on, let me do that again. Sorry guys, it was missing the end of it. It was there. I'm not going to use that passport, but I have got one, yeah. Is that helpful? I've got one where I've got a two-sided piece of A4 that's got all the objectives on it that I made for another school. I'm not using it myself because we've got our own assessment system, but I will pop that in there as well. I wonder if I've actually got it in there. Let me just check if I've not already put it in there for you. No, I haven't, but I can. Oh yes, I have. Aha! There we go. Let me just get rid of that chatty. So yeah, so this was one that I put together for, and it was a colour coding system because we had Come and See, which is and they use a similar coding system. So basically, oh no, that's just a colour coding system. Sorry, I don't think the actual thing's there. Oh yeah, here it is. So that's basically, can you see there that I've broken it down into 3 subjects? I took each level, I gave them all a level, and I broke them down into, so like level 1 would be like year 1, year 2, the level 2, so the 3, 4, you know, etc. And I broke it all down into 3 levels. Does that make sense? And can you see the colour coding at the side? So that's something that I did for my school, but we ended up having another assessment system, but this is something I had in place before. So yes, you can use that. Is that any use to anybody?
That's brilliant. Thanks, Jo. For everybody else, we're going to have to come to the end, really. Jo, that was absolutely amazing. Obviously, you know, just so much to take in. These will be available for you to watch. No, it was really good. These will be available. This will be available for you to watch again. We're going to release these videos, if you like, on July the 13th, I think. If you want to talk to Jo further, I know some people have just asked general questions.
Yeah, please send me a message.
Yeah, so either whether you want to put your email in there, but also Jo's in the CAS Facebook primary group. So we love discussion in there. If you wanted to put stuff in about which schemes or anything like that, we're all in there and we're all up for discussions. Obviously Jo's CAS Sefton as well. So if you want to look and see when our next meeting is remotely at the minute, you can all pop along there. And everybody else.
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah,
feel free to contact me at Hodge Joe, and it's jhodge@olprimary.co.uk. It's all on the PowerPoint if you need to, and if you've accessed that folder, you'll see the PowerPoints in there as well, so you can just get my link from there. Just send me some questions. That's fine. Yeah, sorry we didn't get through them.
No, that's fine. I'm sure people can. Yeah, and also on on Twitter you can find Jo on Twitter as well. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Jo. That was absolutely brilliant. Personal highlights were pretty much everything. I love all your suggestions. I love barefoot and all that kind of stuff. You know I do. Unplugged absolutely all the way. I'm working with people on unplugged stuff at the moment with curriculum. So yeah, I totally agree. Please share your highlights from this via social media. CAS Facebook, primary, Twitter, anywhere. We've got Facebook pages, CAS Facebook pages and all sorts. And also on the CAS website, of course. At the end of this webinar, a short survey will appear on the screen. Would be grateful if you could take a minute to complete the survey. Additionally, in about a week's time, you'll receive an email with a CPD certificate confirming your attendance at this session. Like I said, there'll be a recording of this webinar available, and there will be a link we'll send out around about the 13th of July. We hope to see you at some of the other sessions. There's still sessions, for the rest of today and tomorrow. Please continue to spread the word about the first ever CAS Virtual Showcase. We're going to be having another one in the autumn. Thank you for joining. Hope to see you next time. And Jo, there's absolutely billions of thank yous in there.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much. Absolutely brilliant.
Thanks a lot. Bye, everybody. Have a lovely week.
Bye.